Okay, there's one more concept I want to talk about, which is the idea of compound concepts and the hierarchy of information. So people know that information comes in a hierarchy. Like you have to learn arithmetic before you learn algebra, and arithmetic before you learn, and algebra comes before calculus. There's and this is like in almost all learning there is a hierarchy. Not all the time, but usually for anything that has any length or breadth to it, there's a hierarchy to the information. And so I was working on an idea for a startup last 2 years ago, and this was a really big part of it. I coined a term for this to describe this because I never heard anyone else describe this. Although it might be that someone else has described it somewhere, but this is the terminology that I was using. I called it compound concept. When you have a concept that, in order to understand it, you need to put together two or more other concepts, and those two or more other concepts may or may not actually make any sense on their own. It might be like you need to put five things together and none of them actually make sense or have any utility on their own, in isolation. They all only make sense when you have put them together, but also they're distinct. And so if you don't, it's useful for the purposes of education. If you're not telling your student when you launch into a compound concept that it is a compound concept, often they can feel stupid because they're learning concepts without knowing why they're learning concepts. And so it's very important to sort of outline this stuff. You can map it in advance. You can be like, we're going to start into something and it's not going to make sense until we put all the pieces together. And also there can be a funny sort of situation where you can have I'm using the word recursive. I'm not sure how much it applies, but you can have compound concepts inside of compound concepts inside of compound concepts. They can be as many layers deep as you can imagine. And so it can be incredibly useful to map this out and present it to the student and be like, this is the length and breadth of the thing you're going to learn, and this is when things are going to make sense. Sometimes if you learn one concept at a time, the concept makes sense one at a time, and that's fine. But often that's not the case. Most of the time, there are periods where it's just nothing's going to make sense until you put it all together. And so that's really useful. It's also really useful, I think, for just describing complex ideas. So anyways, compound concepts and the hierarchy of information.